So thanks everybody for coming again, and this is a cool panel. This is a great panel. What we wanted to do, rather than our typical program, was something that could focus on response to Irene, philanthropic response to Irene, governmental response to Irene, and where we're going from here, what's next. We've got an excellent panel. Chuck Ross from the Department of Agriculture. Neale Lunderville, often called the Recovery Czar, but his official title is Irene Recovery Officer. And Neale has been a big player. David Coates, chair of the Vermont Long-Term Disaster Recovery Group, and with a huge job, of course, because as all this emergency work has happened, this long-term committee is going to be an important part of all of our futures. Andrea Cohen from the Vermont Business for Social Responsibility, and Andrea's been on the committee, I can never remember the name of the fund, Vermont Irene Flood Relief, which is the small business fund, which has been an important part of the infrastructure. Sara Kobylenski, the executive director of the Upper Valley Haven, and active with a committee member of Upper Valley Strong, which has been one of the most impressive organizations moving out from the get-go. And Christopher Kaufman Ilstrup from the Vermont Community Foundation, who has been our kind of disaster recovery guy for a number of years. When Haiti happens or when anything happens, we say, Christopher, help us figure out how we're going to respond to this. Help us get the information together. And so has become an expert in this area as much as possible. I'm going to start with Neale. You were expecting that, right?
I was, yes.
So you've got a high-level view of what's going on across the state. And you've seen good, you've seen things that are frustrating. What have you seen that is most impressive so far, and what are your biggest concerns coming down the road?
If I had to kind of summarize what the three challenges would be, it would be going forward, be winter, spring, and money. And not necessarily in that order, but winter. Are we ready for winter? Are our roads ready for winter? Are our homes ready for winter? Folks who are affected, are they in a place where they'll be able, our families, individuals are affected, are they in a place that will have heat, a place that they'll be able to live come wintertime? Is their temporary housing situation not an RV or not somebody's extra bedroom whose generosity has been great but might not be enough to last them through the winter? Are the roads that we put together, will they hold? Will other problems develop? Then thinking about how that goes to springtime. And in spring, I worry about the flooding, another round, with all the debris in the rivers. How our roads react, how our communities adapt. And then, of course, money. Money is something we're worried about at every stage of this. And we did receive some very good news today that I don't think is reached out too far yet. But the bill that our congressional delegation has been working on in Washington to lift the $100 million cap for federal highway actually is going to pass. We've reached agreement on it.
I want to move to David Coates. David, you're chairing this long-term recovery committee, and what we know nationally from disasters is these long-term committees are such a critical part of success that if you don't have them, you're going to have a much harder time coming out of it. Can you say a word about how you all are thinking about your work and how your long-term recovery committee is going to function?
Perhaps the biggest challenge, I know you're going to ask me that anyway, Stu, is the fact that we need people on the ground. We need the boots on the ground, and we need caseworkers. And I'm pleased to say that I can say, with Neale on side of me, that there is a commitment now to put an additional 8 out there, which will give us about 15, which means we can probably handle anywhere from 300 to 400 cases. And that's a huge part of what our needs are going to be going forward.
That's great. Now, I know Chris Graff has been going around saying the single most important thing we do is get caseworkers out in the field. Can you say more about why that's so important?
Yeah, because we have about 7,000 people who have registered. And of those 7,000, about someplace between 5% and 15% will eventually end up in our lap, so to speak, requiring resources from our group as well as the other local groups. So caseworkers need to be working with them to find out what their unmet need is. I'm sure if we talk to some of them, and I had a call just the other night, She knows exactly what her unmet need is. However, we have to do this in a coordinated way to make sure there's no duplication and that all of the resources are going to be used. And the caseworker starts that process. That's why they are so important.
That's great, thank you. So that leads me naturally to Sara. So you go from David, who's helping to facilitate the statewide effort, and then Sara, you wear two hats. Nonprofit organization providing disaster relief, and you're part of the committee that's trying to create the region, the Upper Valley region-wide sustainability plan. What are you seeing at the ground level?
At the ground level, right from the first moment, what we saw was an outpouring of generosity from the community and just the stepping up of the best kind of partnerships and collaboration among folks in the community who are used to working together day in and day out. Some of the biggest challenges for us have been in the world of translation and decoding. And what I mean by that is to take what we see locally in terms of needs, what we have locally in terms of resources and response, and then understand best how to connect it to what the state is doing and has as resource and understanding, and then most of all, to turn that into FEMA-ese. And I've learned that if we have a good sense of humor and are not afraid to ask questions, we can move forward quickly and strongly on this. So the biggest challenges are to continue to understand how to link what's available locally with what the needs are, putting it through those bigger picture filters. And I too am worried about winter, spring, and what I'm also worried about is the long term. We know in the not-for-profit world that after the great outpouring of generosity at the time of a disaster, that there tends to be a drop-off in that kind of generosity down the road for core missions and functions. So we need to be thinking what's going to happen next summer and next fall for the survival of the important nonprofit sector here in the state.
Thank you. I'll get more from Andrea on that, but I want to go to the gentleman farmer first. Chuck, it's been a pleasure to work with you on this agriculture fund. What is going on? What's the status right now of the farm needs, the farmer needs in the state of Vermont, and what's happening next with this farm fund?
Well, it's the farmer's needs is actually a dynamic need, and it's one that we've been trying to catch up with ever since the day after the flood. But what's happened is we have been constantly trying to figure out how bad the need is for Vermont farmers. Some people say it's chemically undoubtable. I know where that came from. I think it came from me first, and that was about 2 months ago. And what's at issue here is we get on the farms, and we realize one level of damage. And then when we come back to the farms, or the farmers dig in and they discover they have some other problems, and then there's the feed issue, which is the big unknown, and that farmers have put hundreds of thousands of dollars of feed in silos, expecting that they're going to be able to use that feed. But that feed, in many cases, is either commingled or straight flooded feed, and we don't know what's going to come out of that silo yet. Some of it may be just fine, some of it may be not fine at all. And if that's the case, the magnitude of the damage the farmers have been confronted with is going to grow significantly. And we're just getting into that window now where we can start to get a sense of what's going on in those bunker silos and other feed storage units out there to see how bad it is.
And say a word about what's happening next then with the fund itself.
Well, you know, what's interesting is we have been, frankly, just overwhelmed with the level of support. We've given out $600,000, which is kind of what we thought we would, we're hopeful we'd be able to do when we started this fund. And so we're kind of where we thought we would be when we started, but we've had the good fortune of having another $1 million plus. We're going to do another round. We're looking at increasing the contributions to those farmers who've already received a round, and we're going to also look to hold some funds in abeyance in the event that we are confronted with real feed issues, that we're confronted with farmers who thought they would be able to get by and can do without, and they discovered that as they come into the spring planting season, which is a time of significant financial outlay, they're really behind the 8 ball and can't get the seed and the fertilizers and soil amendments they need. So another round, probably increase the ones that have already gotten it, hold some in abeyance, and so we can respond to emergencies and some of the springtime needs.
Thank you, Chuck. Andrea, you've been involved with this business fund. I know, and you also, as a nonprofit organization, work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. So I'm interested, for starters, in what you've been doing with the business fund. What kind of specific needs have you seen, and have you been able to address?
Over $300,000 has been raised. We've had so much need, and it continues to come in. We've had over 250 requests for assistance. The fund was designed to fill a gap that needed to be filled, which is small businesses were able to maybe access loans, but so many of them already had so much debt, and they said, we can't extend ourselves anymore. We really need some cash, and we need it quick. And some of the needs that have been identified have been, everything from trash disposal to site work to equipment to inventory, a lot of need. And we estimated in the first 6 rounds of grants that there's been over $25 million in losses, and only about 20% of that might get covered by insurance. So the need continues. And what I'm hearing from folks right now is, what's coming ahead is really the long-term viability of some of these businesses. They're very overextended, and if you all recall, the economy wasn't doing that great before the flood. And now they're dead, they're replacing inventory, and they're really overextended. These businesses are often turned to support community groups and other nonprofits, and they're really hurting right now. So, whether the Little League is going for, a sponsor for the t-shirts or whatever, this is a really tough time for business, and so they feel terrible, but I think you're going to see the effect, in terms of their community giving. And I'm actually challenging communities now to say, hey, now is a great time to support your local businesses, because every year when you go to the business and say, hey, can I have a donation for the silent auction? Hey, can I, get you to sponsor this or that? Now is the time when they actually really need you, because they're part of your community. So when you're doing your Christmas shopping, before you go online, go downtown, because these businesses really need your support.
Thank you, Art.